August 2018. Sousuke Tooka is going through his usual routine. He wakes up deep in the night at 3 a.m. After mixing boiling water with soy milk powder, he grabs himself some chocolate and, as always, starts drawing manga at his desk. But today, something life-changing was about to happen. This is a book written by Sousuke Tooka, the same guy who wrote this. It tells his journey from graduating, to failing and quitting, to finally succeeding. And it's one of the most inspiring stories I've read. Personally, it has helped me recover from some difficult times recently. How? Because this guy is unbelievably average. In a good way. But we will talk about all of that later. For this video, I gathered as much information as I could. For example, did you know that Bebin was based on Snape from Harry Potter? Yeah, me neither. Anyways, let's begin. Sousuke grew up with parents who hated manga and anime, calling it stupid and a waste of time. Despite this, his biggest dream was to be able to make a living with his drawings. And at the age of 23, after graduating from a professional training college specialized in design, he was ready to make it a reality. And this was his plan. He had saved up some money working for a printing company. And according to his calculations, if he moved into a 45,000 yen apartment and spent only 40,000 yen on living expenses, he could get by working part-time only twice a week. Of course, all of his remaining time would be spent on creating manga. And then eventually, stonks. This seems like a pretty solid plan for a start, if it wasn't for a teeny tiny problem. You see, it isn't uncommon for mangaka to go pro in their 20s, but most of them already have years of experience under their belt. Sousuke, however, has never drawn a single manga in his life before. But small things like that couldn't faze him. He was all in. And he knew that he was going to be rich in no time at all. So without wasting any time, he got to work on creating his first masterpiece. It's 2021, and Wit Studio was a bit broke. In fact, they were almost 1 billion yen in debt. It's do or die for Wit Studio. There was no more room for mistakes, and their next shows had to be successful, or else... Surely they had something big planned to turn things around, right? Right? Oh, fuck. Saying Ousama Ranking was not well known is putting it lightly. No one in the West knew about this show. It didn't have a single English translation and not even a subreddit. What the fuck? And this was going to be the savior of Wit Studio? Needlessly to say, there was skepticism. But on October 15, the whole world was holding their breath.
2, 1.
Ousama Ranking launched, and Western audiences loved it. It was the full package. Unique art style, check. Complex and subversive characters, check. Emotional moments that made people cry. Unfortunately, around the halfway point, the story decided to throw itself off a building. Despite this, I stuck with the show, firmly believing in the author's vision. But then... What the fuck? So let me get that clear. You're telling me he wants to marry the girl who fed him a slushie made out of his father? Yep. I immediately turned to the internet to try and understand what was going on through this guy's head. And that's when I met her. Her name is... A 41-year-old corporate dropout tries again as a manga artist when Ranking of Kings went viral. Since then, I've been dying to talk about this book. There were only two problems. First, this shit only ships from Japan. I'm broke! So I did the only thing that made sense. I flew all the way to Japan to get this book. I mean, actually it was for my girlfriend's graduation. Ex-girlfriend now. Damn, this video took so long, my relationship ended. And secondly, I severely overestimated my Japanese skills. Take note, cause this is going to be incredibly painful in the future. And underestimated my laziness. So I got the book, and 1 month passed, and then another, and another. Hey, what's up? Robert, 7 Monate. 7 Monate! Was ist falsch mit dir, du fauler Sack? Hast du nicht mehr alle im Kopf, oder was? 7 Monate, was machst du denn die ganze Zeit immer nur LOL spielen und witzen? Komm mal in die Fresse, du absoluter Idiot. It is done. His piece de résistance. And it was... shit. What did you expect? It's his first manga ever. Undeterred, Sousuke sent his work to a publisher. However, after multiple times, no response. Because of this, Sousuke realized that his current level is simply not good enough. And that can only mean one thing. Training arc. Woo! On top of drawing as much as he possibly can, he started targeting his weak points. He started studying as many books as he could, and he was punching meat in a freezer. He didn't, but I like that scene, okay? And little by little, he was improving until he created something he thought truly looked great. But despite all of his improvement, still no response. It was time to take fate into his own hands, and thus he decided to go to the publishing company personally. The first time around, the editor was very polite. However, after the third time, his face clearly communicated, "Oh, you came again?" Sousuke would later say that the way home was simply dreadful, and that it was the moment he realized he had no talent. 30 unreleased stories. More than 500 pages. At this point, his money was running out as well. It was so bad, Sousuke was only able to afford 2 meals a day, one of them being a measly cup of hot milk with some added sugar. After this complete defeat, Sousuke moved into a house owned by his parents. He then spent around 3 years of his time doing nothing else but playing video games and devoting himself to manga. But even then, he had nothing to show for it. His pursuit had left him with an empty fridge and a crippling fear of society. And that's when Sousuke Tooka quit his dream of becoming a mangaka. He wouldn't draw nor read another manga for 15 more years. As I began translating the book, I made a horrifying discovery. I read manga in Japanese all the time, but most of them have furigana. For those of you who don't know, these stupidly complicated hieroglyphics are called kanji.
Leave me alone!
And furigana is written above them like so, and it's basically a guide for plebs like me who don't know how to read. When there's furigana, I can just type into my dictionary and... But this book has no furigana. None. None! Because of this, when I didn't know a word, I had to draw the kanji with my finger on my phone. And I don't know how to draw. Let's get to work. Done! Finally! Translating this took me so much more time than I initially anticipated. And I'll be honest to you guys, I almost quit this video multiple times. In the past 7 months, I've been trying to make videos. I've made a lot of thumbnails and scripts, and sometimes even started recording the voiceover and editing. But I would always eventually quit. Thoughts like, no one cares about what you have to say, this isn't good enough, and someone else can do it better, always made me run away in the end. To add insult to injury, each time I dropped the video, I would feel more and more ashamed, making it even harder to stick with the next one. And this is one of the reasons this book has become so relatable to me. The next part follows Sousuke over a 15-year period. During this time, Sousuke finds himself repeating the same negative behavior over and over. He is trapped by his past failures and he finds himself reaching new depths of despair. But you know what? I'll let the story speak for itself. Sousuke was working the night shift at a family restaurant. He was miserable and quite frankly, kinda sucked at his job. My man didn't even know how to fry an egg. Due to his crippling social anxiety, he chose to work the night shift because he figured this way he wouldn't have to interact with many people. And around the same time, he started applying to jobs at design companies. Unsurprisingly, none of them wanted him. And the reason was pretty simple. When he was a student, everything was analog, but times had changed and the digital era had arrived, making his previous knowledge basically obsolete. So Sousuke bought a PC and promptly started learning Illustrator and Photoshop. His efforts would all pay off eventually after he impressed an interviewer with his skills and landed a job with a company in Tokyo. Oh, this room is so dark and narrow and there's so many people. This is the worst. I have to stay here for 8 hours? He didn't want to pick up the phone and neither did he want to communicate with anyone. Hey, Tooka. You haven't really learned how to speak politely to your seniors, haven't you? Okay, real quick aside, to Western people this comment might not seem like a big deal, but in Japanese culture, knowing the proper formal expressions and etiquettes is extremely important. This was something Sousuke had never thought about before, and he was hit with the realization that people around him had various emotions and places he didn't even consider. It was terrifying and he felt like a burden. So after just 1 day of work, he quit his new job. This was truly a low point. But looking back at it, Sousuke would say that this was a blessing in disguise. Because his next job was part-timing for a delivery service, where he was exposed to many small and easy interactions with people. This gradually helped him regain basic communication skills, and it greatly helped him feel like his old self again. Around this time, he also got internet installed at his home. And it led to a major turning point in his career, because Sousuke discovered his passion for web design. Making a great website to display his work became an obsession, and he spent a great amount of time studying the languages and technologies. On top of that, he was practicing creating illustrations to be displayed on his site. And out of nowhere, a picture book he drew with a mouse won an award for 500,000 yen. With a mouse, man, that's just a flex. This award also meant that his picture book was going to be published. And finally, everything was going in his favor. Surely, nothing could go wrong now. I really tried finding this picture book. First, I googled Sousuke Tooka award-winning picture book. I know, but sometimes you just have to try, okay? Don't judge me. But obviously, that didn't work. Well then, I estimated that he received this award around 2001 or 2002. And I scoured the internet for picture book awards around these years. But again, nothing. Well, maybe I just have to find the right publishing firm. So I went through a list of Japanese publishing firms that fit the description. And again, nothing. Alright, that's okay. I went to this manga update site and under the previous pen names, AAA, let me check his websites. Oh, we have a match. Alright, I clicked the link and there it was. 3 previous works by Sousuke Tooka. Jackpot. I started reading and of course, fucking kanji. It's okay. It'll be all worth it in the end, right? Wrong. So I spent a bunch of hours translating 2 manga and reading the first chapters of a light novel, and I crafted an entire section of the script around these 3 works. But then I found something odd. The author of the light novel posts personal update messages frequently, one of which saying he changed his name to AAA168 because there are so many people using the pen name AAA. Fuck. If there are a lot of people using the name AAA, then that means I have no way to prove that any of these works are actually by Sousuke Tooka. Hours wasted. At this point, my sanity is at an all-time low, but I'm too deep to turn back now. And that's when I started working on all the interviews with Sousuke Tooka. And oh boy, we'll talk about that later. After winning the awards, Sousuke was pumped. This is the route I was supposed to take in life. And I swear he fucking jinxed it. Because the publishing firm went bankrupt. Man, he really doesn't get a break. Despite this, Sousuke continued sending in his picture books. But you guessed it, no good responses. Because of this, he gave up on becoming a picture book author. Fortunately though, this setback wasn't as painful as the others, since he still had his obsession for web design to return to. Regardless, he continued to study and at the age of 28 landed a job as a web coder. It was a beautiful and welcoming workplace. However, the wounds of his failure as a mangaka ran deep. He had no self-confidence and believed that he wasn't capable of doing anything right. So just like before, Sousuke ran away from his demons and quit his job. I'm already in my late 20s. What am I doing? Before finding his eventual workplace, Sousuke would quit work 6 more times, sometimes on the first day. However, despite all of this, he just focused on staying in motion. As he would later note, if you keep moving, eventually you'll be able to experience growth. One step after another, he reclaimed his confidence. Things he thought were beyond his abilities started to become easy for him, and at the age of 32, he had fully gotten used to being a member of society. Sousuke ended up working at the marketing department of an IT firm, and all things considered, he had it well. Compared to the difficult and unclear path of a mangaka, his current work had clear goals and things he could do that would guarantee success. Sousuke also managed to get a good pay, and learned numerous valuable life lessons that would play a crucial role in his eventual success. Despite all this, Sousuke always felt like he was living his life surrounded by a mist that didn't allow him to enjoy anything. While it wasn't an easy decision, at the age of 41, Sousuke Tooka decided to quit his job and once again pursue his dream. But things would be different this time. Because he won an award back in the day, Sousuke felt like he might have some talent for picture books. That's why he didn't waste a single thought on becoming a mangaka, but instead aimed to become a picture book author. He even came up with the following designs for characters. While he had some understandable worries, he was also brimming with excitement. So in September of 2016, he resigned from his work and then didn't do shit for a whole month. Sousuke was doing some research looking into picture book magazines, but several hurdles presented themselves. First, when he looked into the award winners, every author was in their 20s. And second, many didn't accept people bringing in their work, or you had to pay a review fee to apply. This made Sousuke feel like the picture book industry wasn't very welcoming at all. But you know what he did about this? Nothing. He did nothing until November of 2016.
My disappointment is immeasurable.
Okay, a bit of a rough start, but there are other ways to make money with your art. So Sousuke tried looking online for work as an illustrator, but what he found was mortifying. Can you believe it? On the internet, there were countless talented people. Sousuke was convinced that he would be drowned out by the sheer number and quality of artists. Nonetheless, our boy started creating one illustration a day and uploaded it on a smaller site called Gacha? I don't know. But after just 2 weeks of uploading regularly, he got a notification from the website. They were shutting down. At this point, I'm convinced he's cursed. This made Sousuke reevaluate. How was he supposed to earn money with his art? And he spent his December just doing that. He collected various information, and while he felt like he was taking it easy and being lazy, in the back of his head, he was cooking something up with all the information he gathered. And that's when it hit him. Web manga. When Sousuke first failed as a mangaka, you could only show your work to a single editor. One person would judge whether or not your work was worth anything. The idea of being able to upload your manga and have countless people see your work was very appealing to Sousuke. To him, the world of manga was much more welcoming compared to the world of picture books. But this alone wasn't enough to make him try again as a mangaka. When he was aiming to be a picture book author, Sousuke created the following picture book and sent it to be reviewed. But unfortunately, it was not good enough and got declined. After these things, his enthusiasm for picture books faded, and this led Sousuke to change his goal from becoming a picture book author to once again trying to become a mangaka. His first inspiration came in the form of the story Akai onna ga tsurete kuru mono, a horror story that was like a traditional Japanese folktale. Inspired by the story, he drew 31 pages in 30 days. But after completion, he realized that his manga completely failed to capture the charm of the source material. However, in his eyes, the effort wasn't for nothing, because he was able to analyze his work and identify his weak points. And this is the point where his experience as a salaryman will start to make the difference compared to his 20-year-old self. After digging around, I was able to find a few interviews with Sousuke Tooka, and when I compiled everything, it's 14 pages long. So Sousuke said that he has only 2 friends and meets someone maybe once every 6 months. For him, the hardest thing about being a mangaka is the way his neighbors look at him. They can't understand what a 40-plus-year-old is doing cooped up in his home all the time, and he does not enjoy leaving the house because of this. At the time of the interview, 2021, he had not told his parents about him quitting the company and his new line of work. This is because they don't believe manga is a stable job and he doesn't want to worry them. And a little bit of a fun fact, his cats are named Buchan and Chibiko. Do with that whatever you want. Sousuke revealed that most of his creative process isn't intentional and largely instinctive, and most of the characters are a combination of subconscious influences from anime and movies. 2 of the exceptions are Bebin, who was drawn with Professor Snape of Harry Potter in mind, and Kage, who was drawn with Backbeard from Gegege no Kitaro as a conscious inspiration. Also, Sousuke doesn't decide on an age for his characters and names them according to their roles. For example, Domas comes from the Japanese word for sword master. When asked about Boji being deaf and mute, he again said that it was largely an unconscious decision. But when thinking about it, he says it's likely because he enjoys playing RPGs with silent characters, since it lets him feel more like he is the protagonist. On top of that, he is someone who talks a lot and thus is naturally drawn to silent people. When it comes to the aspect of deafness, in another interview, Sousuke reveals that he has been hard of hearing ever since he was a child, and that it has affected him negatively in school, at work, and in public. Sousuke attributes the fact that his characters are neither pure good nor pure evil to his love of Fujiko F. Fujio, who are a famous mangaka duo most commonly known for Doraemon. In the TV version of Doraemon, Takeshi Goda is simply a bully, but in the film version, he becomes a tough and dependable guy. That kind of gap in character left a deep impression on Sousuke as a child, an impression that is beautifully represented in the characters of Ousama Ranking. And finally, this is what he said he wants his readers to take away from his work. There is a theme I want people who read it to feel, and that theme is, for a lack of a better word, courage. I once gave up on manga and went in a different direction, but giving up doesn't always have to be painful. When you think about going in a different direction, there can be more enjoyable things and things that suit you better. And when I think about that, courage seems to emerge. By his own admission, the first time he tried to be a mangaka, Sousuke's work was selfish. But as a salaryman, he always had to consider what benefits will this bring to the other party and what is the other party looking for. Back in the day, an editor gave him similar advice, but at that time, he was incapable of understanding this crucial wisdom. So this time, Sousuke was going to aim to create a manga that would also give something to his readers. But before anything, he first decided to study the #1 selling manga at the time, One Piece. And he was absolutely blown away. Well, if he could imitate this with his own unique twist, that would be a good direction. And thus, he made a checklist for studying popular manga. What is it trying to give to the reader? Does it bring out the individual quirks of its characters? Are there future plot points it makes you interested in? Is the pacing good? This was all great, but one question remained. Where should he upload? While much smaller compared to Nico Nico and Line Manga, Sousuke decided to start posting on Manga Hack. You see, Sousuke was terribly afraid of negative comments. Thus, the smaller and much kinder community on Manga Hack felt like the right choice to him. But before he could turn his previous picture book into a manga, there were a few things he would have to reconcile. Back then, his goal was to create a story that is somewhat like the never-ending story. But all of the best-selling manga he studied had characters with a goal. The goal had to be something clear and easy to understand. With this in mind, Sousuke decided the prince from his picture book would aim to become the #1 king in the world. The ranking aspect of Ousama Ranking was more of an afterthought according to Sousuke. He figured that younger audiences loved rankings, and that's how he ended up with a title we all know and love. And in February of 2017, he started work on Ousama Ranking. And with this, at the beginning of April, he had completed 5 chapters of Ousama Ranking. There was a bit of a problem though. He did not upload a single one of these chapters. He was paralyzed by negative thoughts. What if no one will read it? What if people say it's boring? What if they make fun of me? But on April 8th, he mustered up the courage to finally click upload. He was so scared that he didn't check his PC for 2 days. But when he finally checked, there it was, a positive comment. Yes. I can do it! His first positive feedback gave Sousuke the courage that he could face anything. And from here on out, little by little, the number of readers was increasing. It was the first time he felt this way. The first time he was truly enjoying drawing manga. Sousuke felt like he was finally able to share his own little world with other people. And even though he didn't know any of their faces, the readers were giving him power. And after just 2 months, Sousuke got an email that changed his life. It was an email requesting to turn Ousama Ranking into a physical book and sell it at stores. This was it. Sousuke could finally become a pro. His dream was within his reach, but for one last time, he would have to fail before reaching his dream. The most common criticism I hear about Ousama Ranking is that it's basically over already. And I felt the same way, to be honest. When Boji became fucking OP in the middle of season 1, I was pretty disappointed. I felt like the pacing was off and what was going to be the point of the show moving forward. But through this whole ordeal, I realized that this wasn't Sousuke's intention in the first place. The power ranking was just a secondary thing from the very beginning, and I think the point where season 1 ends is where the real story Sousuke wants to tell starts. Is the title bait for people like me who loves shonen battle anime? Yeah. Is it false advertising? Kind of, but we shouldn't simultaneously praise and criticize Ousama Ranking for subverting genre conventions. And at the end of the day, I'm still curious to where the story will go next. Another thing that bothers people is in a world where there's so much fucked up shit happening, like the art style might be cute, but boy, this show tackled some dark subject matter. Everyone got a happy ending, which feels like the biggest cop-out ever. And I think this quote from an interview explains his mindset the best. I'm a delicate-hearted person, so I love stories with happy endings. I'd like to make everyone happy if I can. Now, I personally prefer bittersweet endings, and I feel like a happy ending without any sacrifice often feels meaningless and unrealistic. But regardless, while Ousama Ranking has flaws and I can understand if people drop it, learning about the person creating the story has given me a new appreciation for the series as a whole. Because say what you want, I think Sousuke succeeds in getting across the message he wants to impart, which is about courage, moving forward, and being flexible in life. I can't help but see parallels between Ousama Ranking and the life of Sousuke. Boji is as weak as you can imagine a character to be. However, he faces the challenges life throws at him again and again, even if he cries and stumbles along the way. On the other hand, Sousuke has a lot of flaws and innumerable fears. It's hard for me to imagine the anxiety and doubt that made this man quit 6 jobs, that made him hide away from society for years, and that follows him even now. Despite quitting, despite going on a 15-year detour, despite obstacles on his second attempt, he made his dream come true. An incredible opportunity was right in front of Sousuke, but his insecurities would once again stand in his way. He feared that his manga wouldn't sell, and in January of 2017, only 2 months before his manga was supposed to hit the shelves, Sousuke told the editor in charge of releasing his manga that he doesn't want to proceed with the project. For 8 months, people were putting in time and money to get ready for this release, and he let it all go to waste. Sousuke felt terrible about this, but he had decided that he would need to get more readers to sell any of his manga. For this purpose, he started uploading to a new website called Nico Nico. Every day, he uploaded one of the 40 chapters he had already drawn by this time. But even after April had arrived, there was no significant change to be seen. Did he make the wrong choice? Was it a mistake to turn away from such a big opportunity? Because of his upload schedule, people thought Sousuke was drawing 1 chapter a day. And due to this misunderstanding, he was featured on the front page of Nico Nico, and Ousama Ranking was nominated for the 2018 Manga Awards. This planted the seeds for what was about to happen in 2 months from now. Countless emails and notifications were flooding his inbox. At first, Sousuke thought he might have gotten roped up in some illegal scheme, but in reality, this was the moment he was always dreaming of. Ousama Ranking had gone viral, gaining 14 million views in 1 day.